Hey guys, this is Kamaguno, and today I'm doing Kamaguno's Best Comics of the Week. And this week I actually had a bit of a heavier haul with 18 books, and this is the show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show. I go least favorite to best pick of the week. So let's get started. Number 18 for me is Witchblade issue 14. This book, so I would say there's usually like one really good one out of like 5 issues, so every 5 issues, and then the other 4 are kind of dull. And this one didn't even have Alex in it, and that was kind of disappointing. But also I think that was kind of what was interesting about it as well, is that you get to see the supporting characters trying to protect their world, or, kind of live their daily lives and deal with demons, as Alex is not there anymore. So I thought that was interesting, but the problem is I just don't feel like any of these characters are fleshed out enough for me to want to see this. I still get confused of which character is who, and what backstory they all have. So yeah, I just kind of wish those characters are a bit more defined before jumping into a story like this. So overall, I gave this 2 stars. I was just kind of bored with this issue. Moving on to number 17, though. I was a bit disappointed with this book, and that is Black Cat, issue 1. I was actually really looking forward to this one. I think Marvel had a couple of years where they just did not know what to do with this character, especially after Superior Spider-Man. But over, the past maybe 2 years or so, they fixed her up. Especially in Silk, I think, started that, where she was the villain in that book. But I think the way they explained her being the villain made sense there. And then really, really fixed her character with Nick Spencer's run. So I was actually really looking forward to this ongoing. And I just don't really feel like Black Cat needs an ongoing. I think it was definitely more promising in The Amazing Spider-Man with the whole Thieves Guild, and here it just didn't really play out as well for me to want to pick up another issue. And I think honestly it's because of the weaker artwork. I didn't think it was very detailed, especially facial expressions, so I just couldn't get into this one. And honestly, in the back of my head I kept thinking Catwoman, and obviously they both are very similar characters, but because I really did not like the most recent Catwoman series, I just kept going back to that one and couldn't get it out of my head. I'm like, I don't know if this is really going to be a series I want to pick up more issues for, so probably won't get issue 2. I just didn't really find a hook with this one. So overall, I'm going to give this 2 stars, and that is number 17. Alright, moving on to number 16, and that is Batman issue 72. Love this cover, though, by David Finch, who hasn't done any interiors in a while for this book. I think he started it, and hopefully maybe one day we'll get another Batman arc with David Finch, but or an interior book with David Finch. But yeah, this issue is pretty much the same thing we keep getting, which is why it's so low for me. It's just extremely repetitive, and I actually usually like the Catwoman and Batman stuff, but I just didn't like it here. I get it, and I think that King, a lot with his poetic style of storytelling, and, makes sense for this tool, is very repetitive, and I'm just like, alright, I get it. Now it's in the point of view of Thomas Wayne. Cool, I guess. And I will say you get some answers of what's been going on, but for me it's kind of too late. I just don't care. He's like, I get it, you want to attack Batman psychologically. I just need more story out of this. So for me, I gave this 2 stars. I'm just not interested in this arc as much as I was before the wedding, honestly, but we'll see if that changes with the next couple of issues, and obviously the new Batman Catwoman series. So I'm going to give Batman issue 72 2 stars, and that is number 16, I believe. Moving on to number 15, which is Frozen, The Hero Within, issue 1. Always get these Disney books. I've been really enjoying Incredibles, which is in the back here. The last part of Secret Identities comes out next week, so really looking forward to that one. But yeah, the Frozen stuff I haven't been really liking as much, because I think they have to hold back a lot more because their second movie hasn't come out. Incredibles, they kind of have a bit more free reign because there's not like a third movie that's announced or anything, so they can kind of explore a bit more. And here, you just don't really get stories with the sisters, and that's disappointing because that's like why you go and read Frozen, is because you want to see more of Elsa and Anna. And I didn't think this was totally disappointing. You get to see this little girl who's in like foster care, and you get to see Kristoff relate to her, so that was cool. But again, I read this book for Anna and Elsa, so I wish there was more of them. And also, it's a kid's book, and I think that the word, there's just too much words here. I think it's a little too clunky for a kid's book, and there's just a lot of dialogue. So overall, I'm going to give Frozen issue 1 2.5 stars. I might get the next issue only because it does look like Anna and Elsa are on the cover, so maybe it'll be about them, or maybe it's just a cover and it's just another misleading cover. So yeah, like I said, giving this 2.5 stars. Moving on to number 14. Let's see. Number 14 for me is Captain Marvel issue 6, and I got the X-Men cover, which I believe is Mark Brooks. Maybe it's not him. It just looks like his style. Let's see. It is Adi Grandov who does the cover. Really cool cover here. And Captain Marvel, I didn't really like the first arc, and it's always hard for me to get into Captain Marvel. I always want to like her, and I just tend not to like her ongoing series. I loved Life of Captain Marvel. I wish more books could be like that, but the first arc with the post-apocalyptic stuff, didn't really quite care about it. And here, it took me a while to care for this arc. I did like the ending. I like Black Widow's explanation of, like, hey, you two have the thickest skulls, and that's why it's hysterical that you switched bodies. But it takes a while to get there. So I'm hoping issue 2 will have a little bit more promise. But also, this kind of feels like a filler issue, which is weird, because we're only in the second arc. And we don't really know what world Kelly Thompson's trying to build here, because we have so many like one-off type arcs, because the other ones, like the first arc was very Elseworld, and now you have a body switching arc already. I just want to see like what is the series going to deliver with every arc, and maybe it is these kind of one-off arcs, I don't know, but haven't been loving it. So overall I'm going to give Captain Marvel issue 6 2.5 stars, and that is number 14. Moving on to number 13, which is Birthright, issue 36. This is an extremely slow series for me. It's always kind of middle ground, and I've invested a lot of time into it, which is why I haven't dropped it, but it's an okay book. It's not my favorite. I know a lot of my frontline crew love Birthright because it's so high fantasy. I'm usually not into the high fantasy stuff, but I like the family aspect of the book, which is what kind of led me to read so many issues of this one. But this issue, we get to explain magic a bit into the regular world, which was interesting. And I like seeing the parents, like seeing Mikey being interrogated and like say, hey, stop doing this. So I enjoyed that aspect, but like I said, it was a really slow burn, a lot of exposition in this issue. So overall, I'm going to give this one 3 stars, and I think you kind of know what you're getting by this point if you're reading Birthright, and it's kind of the same thing of slow pacing, and that's kind of where the book's going. Very epic poem style. Alright, moving on to number 12, which is Jughead the Hunger vs Vampironca issue 2. I like both these franchises a lot. Really enjoyed The Hunger, really enjoyed Vampironca. And this issue focuses a bit more on the Hunger cast members. So last issue is totally about Vampironca, and I didn't really love that you don't get the crossover feel until it looks like the next issue of the series. So, and also it's kind of weird to see that these artists with this colorist, which is the colorist of Vampironca, I'm guessing, or at least it matches the style of their colors. So it's very, I don't know, I could explain it like the sun going down, that type of color. So yeah, I feel like the coloring's a little off for me for this artist, because Vampironca had different pencils, but I like where it's going. I like the potential of the book where Betty is just like, vampires don't exist, then obviously you have Vampironca. So overall, I'm going to give this 3 stars. I think it was fun, but I don't think it fully tapped into its potential, but hopefully issue 3 will get there. So that was number 12, I believe, and like I said, I gave that 3 stars. Moving on to number 11, which is Marvel Team Up, Spider-Man and Miss Marvel, issue 3. I got the Marvel's 25th anniversary. I guess this is like Marvel's 9th. I don't know which Marvel's 25th anniversary it is. But anyways, that's the cover they got. It's Spider-Man No More, but from a different camera angle. So I thought that was very cool. But this is the last part of Miss Marvel teaming up with Spider-Man, and then the next arc is going to be Carol and Miss Marvel, which I'm really looking forward to. So I guess this is not so much Marvel team up, it's Kamala teams up with everybody, which I'm perfectly fine with because I love Kamala. But yeah, this issue I feel like it was just one issue too long. I didn't need it. I feel like they could have ended this arc last issue, and I didn't really like that Kamala was crying a lot, where she's like, I don't want to be in your body anymore. I'm like, Kamala wouldn't cry. I think she'd be upset. But she was like a little bit too upset in this book. I thought that was weird. But overall, it's fun. You know, it's a fun kind of one-off series. And I like seeing these two characters that are very similar in tone meeting up. It was cool. There is a bit of a cliffhanger, though, that one of the scientists got Kamala's powers. So I don't know if that's ever going to go anywhere. Or it's one of those cliffhangers like, maybe if another writer wants to talk about it, they can. But overall, like I said, it was a fun series. Not my favorite issue. I would say last issue was, and again, probably an issue too long, but it's cool. It's a cool book. So if you have room on your pull list, I recommend the team up book if you're a big Kamala fan, especially if you haven't been liking where Miss Marvel's been in her own series in space. This kind of ground stuff a bit, even though they're switching of bodies. Somehow it's a bit more grounded. So I'm gonna give that 3 stars, and that is number 12, number 11. Moving on to number 10, which is Bettie Page, issue 1. This is Bettie Page Unbound, which was a lot of fun. We get to see Bettie kind of take a side trip from what they've been dealing with in her book, and they still reference what's been going on, and she uses the star to kind of jump from different realities. This issue, she's pretty much Red Sonja, and then the next issue, she's going to be Vampironca. So, if you are a huge Dynamite fan, I definitely recommend this one. If you're just a Bettie Page fan, I don't think you necessarily need this. I don't know how much it'll tie in, but you do have that star, which was pretty important, so maybe it will tie in a lot. But I had fun with it. I like the actual Bettie Page series a little bit more, just because it's a more espionage series, but I thought this was fun, and again, if you're a Dynamite fan and a fan of those characters, it's cool to see Bettie Page in that place. So I'm going to give this 3 stars. Artwork, as always, is really solid for this book, so yeah, I recommend Bettie Page all the time. It's a fun book. Alright, moving on to number 9, and a bit higher than it usually is, and that is Deathstroke issue 44, and I enjoyed this issue. I kind of forgot what happened in Teen Titans till I started reading like the first couple of pages, like, oh yeah, he got shot. Totally forgot about that. But yeah, so what happened to Deathstroke? Is he dead? Probably not. But I actually like the Teen Titans moments the most here, where we get to see Jericho controlling Red Arrow and finding out that she's the one who killed him, and now we kind of have a fight of who's going to be the next Deathstroke. So I thought there were some interesting plot points here that are introduced. So it's bringing a little bit more new life to Deathstroke, which I think desperately needs it, because I think it's a series that's kind of gone on for a little bit too long. But I do like this current arc. So I'm going to give that 3 stars, and that is number 9. Moving on to number 8, which is Meet the Skrulls, issue 5. I enjoy the way this ended. So we get to see maybe some convoluted stuff happening, but the father has died, and now we get to see our family of Skrulls fight off another Skrull, so who is pretending to be the father. Like I said, it kind of gets confusing of who's who, but I like that you don't know who to trust in this book, and that's kind of the point. But by the end, it has a nice ending where the family's a family, they have to leave their lives, but they're still hiding in plain sight, I guess, but, you know, sticking together. So I enjoyed that. And then by the end, if you read the letters page, it's not actually the end, or maybe this is like a tease, but this book in the Warner story is over. There's no way that over the next few years we'll be spending time with one of your favorite characters in one of your favorite books and come across a reveal that's actually Alice Warner. No way is that going to happen. Their story's over. The end. So looks like we will be seeing Alice again. I don't know exactly where, but in your favorite book. I mean, that could be any book, right? I have a feeling it'll probably be Avengers, though. That'd probably make the most sense, but we'll see what ends up happening. So overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. I thought it was pretty fun, and overall, it was a good miniseries. I hyped it up a little bit too much in my head. I don't think it met those expectations, but overall, it was a pretty good middle ground book and did something different with the Skrulls, so that was cool. And I think the artwork could have been a little better for the book, though, and that's kind of what brought it down a bit. Alright, moving on to number 7, which is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, issue 5. I got the Angel cover, and there was a different artist in this book, which kind of took me out of it, especially because the eyes looked very crazy for everybody. It looked like they were just gonna say something, again, something crazy. Like, look at Buffy's, like, she looks angry, but she's not really angry in that point. And then it looks like Willow's kind of having a meltdown there, but she's not, so the artwork was kind of weird for me. But hopefully Dan Mora will be back on the series soon. But I enjoyed the story where we get to see Buffy and Willow find out about Xander and have to save his life. So what's going to happen there? And we get to learn a little bit more about the villain's plans as well. So overall, I thought it was a pretty solid story with some lackluster artwork. So overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars, and that is number 7. Alright, moving on to number 6, and honestly, very close. Between my 5 and 6, I was like kind of going back and forth. But number 6 for me is DCeased, issue 2. I thought this was a much better issue than issue 1. It had a bit more of direction, had a bit of more of an Injustice feel, you know, where I think Tom Taylor really shines is to give us these interesting cliffhangers, or not cliffhangers, but twists. And we get to see that with Black Canary, where she ends up killing Hal with her scream and becoming the next Green Lantern. I was like, oh, that's really cool. That was very Injustice, just because, you know, Black Canary was, you know, a bigger character in that book, so I thought that was really cool. And then by the end, you know, Damian actually having feelings that Batman is turning into a zombie. And Batman was smart enough to use the Freeze costume to slow it down, but it doesn't mean he's not becoming a zombie. So I thought that was interesting. I still don't really like the artwork for this book, though. I really don't like the facial expressions, and I honestly the pencils feel really weak to me. Like Lois over here, just not a big fan of the art. But I do think the story picked up a bit. It took a little while, like the first 1/3, I'm like, alright, where are you going with this? But then I did like a lot of the character beats here. So overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. Honestly, probably would have been higher if there was just some better artwork there for me. Alright, moving on to number 5, which is Young Justice, issue 6. I thought this was an improvement of the book, and honestly, it fixed a lot of the Superboy problems I had with the characters. I'm like, oh my god, he's a son. We didn't even get to see this on panel, and then you find out it's a very Superboy-esque way. He does it to help the girl. It's not actually his blood son, but he does it to protect them. So, as a Cassie and Connor fan, I was kind of happy to hear that. I was like, alright, there's hope that Cassie and Connor could be together and not have drama. So I really enjoyed that section of the story. I really liked just the characters' interaction, learning more about their dynamic and making them feel like more of a team as they, fight some bad guys. So I enjoyed that, and the artwork is really solid for this book. But I just don't care about Gem World. That's the part where I'm just like, all right, let's move on. And I know that's like the main part of this book, so that's an issue. But I did like the characters a lot here, and I think they straightened up some stuff for me. And again, I like the dynamic of the characters. So Young Justice issue 6 gets 3.5 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to number 4, which is War of the Realms, issue 5. I've been really liking this series. We have only one more issue left, so hopefully the ending sticks to landing. This was probably the weakest issue of the series thus far, though. There is a lot of fillerish stuff where I'm like, alright, I don't really care what Spider-Man and his team is doing. I know you're trying to promote the tie-ins, but I don't care about them. I really didn't like any of the miniseries, but I liked the Thor stuff a lot. Once we actually got to Thor, I really enjoyed that. Him being in the sun, telling people not to hear his screams, I thought was cool. We get to see his parents are still alive, so that was interesting. And then Jane. My girl Jane, always the best part of this series, and she wants to be part of the fight. She's desperate for it, and she holds this broken hammer, and it looks like she'll be some version of Thor. We'll have to see. And obviously, they're building up to the Valkyrie story, so we'll see where next issue takes us. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of Jane stuff, but I love that ending with her. So, and also the artwork is just drop dead gorgeous for this book. It's so cinematic, and I really love this creative team. So I enjoyed this issue. Overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. Again, not the strongest of War of the Realms, but honestly, this has been a really solid series for me, and one of the strongest events in a really long time. So I really enjoyed it. Or at least definitely one of the strongest Marvel events. All right, moving on to number 3. Glad to see this higher, and that is Shazam issue 6. More consistent artwork because most of it was Billy and Mary Marvel, so we get to see them interacting, and then you still get a little taste of that gaming world, and that's when it got a little inconsistent. I'm like, I don't really need to see them right now. I know the wizard was introduced there, but I just felt like that was a little off. Do that another issue. But I love the Billy and Mary stuff where they're debating. Mary's like, hey, let's just tell our parents what's been going on. And Billy's like, no. And then they come in and Billy's dad is there. Mary gets obviously really anxious about it, saying, what does this mean for our family who are pretty much lost right now? So what do we do to save them? And Mary actually reveals that they're superheroes. I thought that was such a cool ending. So, really looking forward to seeing where this goes. I really like the Mary and Billy stuff a lot here. So, and the artwork with Mary and Billy is so strong. So I wish that was the consistent artwork for the whole series. But, yeah, overall I'm going to give Shazam issue 6 4 stars. And that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, and that is Paper Girls, issue 29, the penultimate issue of one of my favorite series of all time. A really cool cover with Mac giving a winky face and a prayer sign. So I think, maybe you don't have to lose faith in these characters. But what happens here is that we get to see finally the old-timers and the clones kind of agree on, all right, we'll never use time travel again. And I would say this is kind of the weaker aspect of the issue where you have one, flashback scene of Waru figuring out, oh, okay, so that's what happened in time travel. You guys actually saved me. All right, so I guess, this thing's over. So I thought that was a little bit too easy. But other than that, I really enjoyed this issue because of the characters. I love... we really get to see how far all the characters have gone. I would say especially Mac, KJ, and Erin. I don't think Tiffany had the biggest scenes in this issue. Well, actually, no, I can't say that, because she did have she was the prayer scene. She has the one who's kind of figuring all this out. That way they can possibly still remember what happened during this time. So Tiffany actually did have good moments. All 4 girls had a good moment. But... yeah, with Mac and KJ, just being fully comfortable with who they are, because that was pretty much their journey. And Mac making the decision, though, that she wants to go back and not remember anything. Because she's like, well, at least I wouldn't remember my death. So, she does make that big moment, even though that means she's going to lose her relationship with KJ. So, but I love their cute moments throughout the whole entire issue where they, where KJ's like, oh, I know you because you taste like cigarettes and toothpaste. And, I thought there were some really cute moments there. And KJ, joking around with Max. So I enjoyed that. And then by the end of the issue, so it leads up to... The girls going back in time, going back to where they or going forward, because they're in the 1800s right now. So going forward in time and not remembering anything. So they're going to maybe remember glimpses of being on a paper route, but it'll all be like it was a nightmare or a dream. And that fits, because we've been seeing a lot of nightmares and dreams throughout this whole entire book utilized. So, but also, the saddest part is that they know their future. They know their fate of that. They're not going to be friends. Just like a lot of childhood friends, it doesn't mean you're going to stay connected. But you kind of have this glimmer of hope because Tiffany is holding the Apple product that started it all. And we're not just paper girls, we're friends. And she keeps repeating it. And I love the ending. So it ends with Erin. She's the last one being zapped. And she goes back to that religious aspect of this book. And, the bitten apple, which means Adam and Eve. And she says what Eve did, wasn't a bad thing. So, I think she was actually smart. So all this time we keep thinking that technology is bad. That's kind of what this book's been teaching us. But it looks like Erin disagrees. She's like, she was smart to bite the apple. She was smart to not be ignorant, that she wanted to have knowledge. And so her clone pretty much says, don't worry, beautiful. That's just another silly old story written by a bunch of dudes. Which obviously this is a very feminist content. So I thought that was really funny to end it with. But yeah, so we'll have to see what this all means. Does this kind of change the theme of the story that we all thought was what Paper Girls was about, or at least what I thought Paper Girls was about, is that hey, technology's bad and that's what's up. It shows how bad technology could be with all this time travel aspect, and the ethical issue of even being able to time travel is definitely placed here. But I think it depends on how knowledge is used, and now, obviously it's also ruining a friendship. It showed that technology, everyone loses their connection, everyone loses how people talk to each other. There's different ways of communicating because of technology, but I think with this kind of ending, it shows that, technology is what actually brought us together, and I don't want to forget that. So I'm really curious to see what the ending result's going to be of this series, what's going to be the overall theme of this book. But I also like the small notes of, the old-timers and what the villains actually mean, because they stated again where the old-timers says, I'm trying to protect you. Why can't you see that? And I think that a lot of older people with kids I'm trying to protect you from the world, go away, and don't let the kids kind of figure out the world on their own. I feel like that's an interesting comment here, because it does show how powerful and how kids are as an individual with these books that I think a lot of adults kind of forget. So I really love all the themes of this book overall, and really looking forward to seeing how this one ends next month. We're gonna get a double-sized issue. Hopefully it ends well, and I thought it was a pretty good lead up. Again, my only nitpick kind of being that I thought the Japo revelation was a little quick. But I love the artwork. I think there's some really great emotion with this one. So Paper Girls issue 29 gets 4.5 stars, and that is number 2. All right, moving on to number 1. What beat Paper Girls this week? And that was Spider-Gwen, Ghost Spider issue 9. I've been really liking this arc. I've been really liking this series overall, but this is the penultimate issue until we get a new Spider-Gwen series in August, which is the same creative team, so they're just relaunching it. Just calling it Ghost Spider now, I believe, which makes sense with her going into another multiverse, which is, the 616, to go to school. So we'll see how that ends up tracking, but yeah, I really enjoyed this issue because we get to see, a really real thing happen where people get hurt at Gwen's concert. She tries to save as many people as she can, but Harry gets hurt, and she realizes this monster, not even just a supervillain, this monster, wanted to hurt Gwen, but by hurting her friends. So she's pissed off. Definitely the venom is kind of taking over in this way where, hey, is she gonna really hurt this guy? And I this whole entire arc, I love the moment where she really can't hold back. But this whole entire kind of fight against our main villain is saying, well, the reason I'm not you is because I know how to hold back. If I could hit a regular person and their head could go flying off because that's how strong I am, but I never utilized that power. So she ends up using her strength against this guy, but never killing him. It's that's what makes me stronger than you. And I thought that was a really good moment because it's something that Gwen has been fighting. She's trying to, figure out who she is after everyone knows she's Spider-Gwen. What am I? Who am I as a person? I'm just trying to figure out, what is life? Very much a big question of your 20s is, who am I and where is my life going? Where do I want the rest of my life to go? So, and, obviously, added with that is her being this, super celebrity superhero with, great responsibility with her powers. So, I thought this was a really kind of interesting way to show, hey, I'm not a monster, even if people think I am, or I have the powers to be so. So, I thought that was really cool, and I like the ending where, Gwen and her friends are there for Harry, and I love the MJ moment where MJ says, I knew you'd show up sooner or later, and, Gwen says she's sorry, and she says, you should be, you were rushing the beat again. And I love that moment, because, a big thing where Gwen's like, well, everyone sees me as Spider-Gwen, no one sees me as Gwen Stacy, but she's like, well, except MJ, because she's always saying stuff like that and just treating me as a normal person. So I love that kind of small moment between the two. So I thought this was really good. Artwork is tremendous. I really like this creative team a lot. It's just a really good story. It's a really good character story. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where this last part goes and where they're going to take Gwen's journey. So Spider-Gwen Ghost Spider issue 9 gets 4.5 stars, and that is my number 1 pick, my pick of the week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Definitely go follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Go check out my comic books like Father Like Daughter and They Call Her the Dancer. And every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time is Frontline Live, where we discuss our favorite comics and comic book news. So be sure to check that out as well. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Bye guys.